Motherhood Grace interview. I am Kate Markovitz, the founder of Motherhood Grace, and today I am super excited to bring to you another real-life mom interview, but this one is special because Maris is also creating resources that live online that are honest, authentic, and fantastic to connect with if you are a mom today. Trust me, you're going to want to go check her out. So let me give you her formal bio. Maris Young is a wife and mother who craves authentic connection. She created Young Honest Mother to bear the torch for conversations surrounding all things marriage, motherhood, and modern home economics, in all honesty. Unnerved by the unspoken, Maris offers a welcoming space for people to share what their experiences have really been like. As well as sharing thought-provoking blog posts and meaningful topics, Maris hosts Young Honest Mother, the podcast, to feature heart-to-heart conversations with everyday women who are courageous enough to share their own stories. She also chats with industry truth tellers far and wide who aren't afraid to tell it like it is. And in doing so, Maris sets out to inspire and empower others to start honest dialogues in their own communities. I mean, isn't that totally amazing? I'm so thrilled that she is providing a space for women to connect online and tell their honest stories, because it's a little bit behind the start of Motherhood Grace. I just also was disturbed that there weren't more resources available where people weren't just showing perfect pictures or making it look like motherhood was this easy thing to come by when there is a lot of challenge. And it doesn't mean that you have to share it in a scary way. It just means that you show up and you say, hey, today was a great day, but there's also some bad days, and here was a bad day, and here's what happened. Or, motherhood is very lonely. This is what it looks like for me on a day-to-day basis. And Marissa's doing that, and I'm so thrilled that she is. You're going to love this interview with her today, so let's get to it. And we're back with another Motherhood Grace real-life mom interview. These are these interviews where I'm just sitting down with other moms who have come into my life who I really respect, and I just want all of you to hear their stories. And I met Maris through Beauty Counter, and I was just totally drawn to her because of her honest, which I'm using that word on purpose, but her honest perspective, not only about motherhood, but pretty much everything you share about your life. I just really jive with everything. I feel like everything you say, I'm like, yep, got it. That's me too. So thank you so much for coming on and connecting with my audience.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so Maris is Young Honest Mother. That's what you call, Young is your last name, which I just love. Everything, your branding, I'm like, yep, totally driving with that too. So cute. And she has a podcast, she has an Instagram. You guys are going to get to hear all the different ways that you can connect with her, but that's why I wanted to give a little shout out to the honest, because that is what we need in this society. So Maris, I just want to start, of course, as we have to do at the beginning, just hearing your background and your journey really into motherhood, because that's who most of these listeners are, either pregnant or they just had a baby, maybe they're within that first year. And so I just want them to hear how those transitions happen for women, because it looks different for everyone. So give us a little background about you and your journey.
Yeah, so I think where I want to start is, I guess, finding out I was pregnant. My husband and I had been married for about a year, and at that point I was really uncertain of when I wanted to start having kids. I knew that I wanted to be a mom, but it felt like almost like I was putting these milestones in front of us. So okay, first I wanted to get a good job, whatever that means,
Right. Right.
Settle in a house. Then I wanted us to have all this money in savings and so on and so forth. And then I realized I might not ever get to the point where I feel like I have everything that I need. And so we just decided to move forward. And when I found out that I was pregnant, I was still in the early stages of establishing my career. So something that's really coming up for me a lot right now is realizing how much emphasis was placed on education and career when I was younger. And that was really the focus of all of my attention, when I was growing up.
Same girl, same. That's why I get you, because I'm totally that way too.
I saw my mom as a stay-at-home mom, and she was excellent. She was like a quintessential stay-at-home mom. She's literally right now downstairs making chili and apple crisp for my brother's birthday, which we're celebrating tomorrow. And she's like, I had this vision of stay-at-home motherhood and motherhood in general, but at the same time, the way that I was raised was mainly to focus on education and career. And so I really took that to heart. And I went full out, just like, okay, I'm all about studying. I'm all about like trying to climb these corporate ladders. And it felt good. It felt fulfilling. At the time, or I guess now I realize that I was really seeking a lot of that external validation because
Mm-hmm.
like that was making me feel like I was worth something. But in any case, I was so just gung ho about my career that when I found out I was pregnant, I thought that I would just continue working. Like, okay, in 9 to 10 months, I'm gonna have a baby. We'll have a baby, and I'll go back to work. And that was really as far as my like planning went. And
I find that interesting about you now, just knowing you a little bit, just because you seem maybe like you would plan, but literally, I'm me too. Like,
yeah,
I was kind of like, oh yeah, the baby's just gonna like swoop in and be the baby, and like things will kind of go back to normal. And maybe that's why my world got rocked. I don't know.
yeah. And honestly, like when I look back now, I can see that a lot of that naivete, if you will, and not understanding how much my world would change stemmed from the lack of transparency that I found when it came to all things like marriage, motherhood, and modern home economics, which is what inspired me to create Young Honest Mother in the first place. And so I would literally ask like the women in my community, even like relatives, what was it like? What should I know about motherhood? And they would do one of two things. They would either say like, oh, it's just going to be so amazing. Like the newborn smell is like incredible. You're just going to love every moment. Or on the flip side, they would say, check back with me after you have the baby, and then I'll let you know what it's really like because I don't want to scare you. And so I had
Hmm.
two extremes as like goalposts, but they weren't helpful at all. And so, I went throughout my pregnancy and I worked, and when the baby came, I had 6 weeks of maternity leave. And it
So
wasn't
crazy.
until week 4 that I realized, oh, that's right. I am going to go back to work. We have not like scheduled anything or coordinated anything in terms of childcare because my husband was working too. And so
Mm.
the scramble, like those last 2 weeks of trying to figure out where the baby was going to go, were we going to get like a nanny to come in, were we going to do daycare, and it all happened really quickly just because we were in a time crunch.
Right.
And we were able to find actually a family friend who had a nannying background, and she would come over and sit with my son Milo while I was at work. But I wasn't able to slip back into my career persona as seamlessly as I thought I would have been.
Hmm.
And I just felt like everyone was looking at me and talking to me, as if I were the same Maris. And I just wanted to scream, like, I just had a baby. Like, don't you understand? Like, these timelines, these PowerPoint slides are so trivial compared to the child that I'm leaving at home. And I didn't have anybody to talk to about what I was experiencing. And so it was a lot of just kind of trying to go it alone, because for one, I was still so much in a fog of like the postpartum haze, like all
Oh
these
yeah.
hormones that
And
are
people aren't sleeping. I mean, it's
not
crazy.
sleeping well. And I'm working. I'm like trying to take care of the house. I'm still a wife and I'm still a sister. I have all these relationship roles. And it wasn't until like 9 months later when I realized I can't continue on like this. This is just too much.
So you
Uh,
did that for a full 9 months. I actually don't know if I realized it was that long. Okay.
Yeah, so I ended up meeting you as I decided to leave my full time career.
Right. I do remember that. Hmm.
Yeah. So it had been about 9 months, and I was running myself ragged, not asking for help, not even conceding that I needed help, you know?
Hmm. We have
And
to talk about that.
let's
Making a
chat.
note.
So it
Okay.
was it was definitely a transition that, looking back on it, I could see how much support, how much more support I could have used, and like I don't know. I have a lot of compassion for Maurice 2 years ago because I walked into something that I had very little idea about, like the true, honest reality of, and I'd kind of idealized my mom and like, oh, she's like always doing arts and crafts and
Mm-hmm.
like she creates such an inviting home and everything, and I just thought like I would automatically be that way.
Right.
So
So do you think it was like do you think, well, I guess I'm presuming, was it a hard time for you or was it just like a totally different than what you were expecting?
So I feel like the first 9 months were only challenging in retrospect because I was so out of it. Like, actually, my mom and my sister in law, at some point within those 9 months, they took me aside separately. They had not coordinated with one another at all. And they were just like, Maris,
So
you're,
they like noticed a difference. Yeah.
they were like, you need to ask for more help. You need to
Mm-hmm.
like slow down. We're
Right.
worried about you. But I didn't feel it in the moment because I was just trying to keep my head above water, with all of
That
the,
survival mode, like
yeah,
you really, and I've experienced that. Have you experienced that in other parts of your life or like at other periods in time before that?
no,
No, okay. So that's what I find interesting because I can now have the wisdom to look back and be like, yes, I experienced that in college where it was like fill my plate so much and then like I had something happen and I just like crashed because it was like I had to take a step back.
yeah,
And I feel like that happened with me with like the motherhood thing. It was like I was in survival mode, and as soon as she started like sleeping more, or like maybe you when you left your job, it was like then there was a crash because I didn't have like all that adrenaline to
yes,
really keep me going.
I didn't have
Um,
activities anymore that were like vying for my time in the same way. So yeah,
yeah. So did you find like that transition, like when you left your job to then just being at home, like how did that go?
yeah. So that was another time that I had idealized. Like I just I thought that staying at home with Milo 24/7 was gonna be like a dream. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna get to watch him grow up and do all of these wonderful things, which is true. Like I was there for a lot of those like milestone moments.
Mm-hmm.
But I also had no preparation for like how mentally and emotionally exhausting
Yeah.
spending all of your time with an infant slash toddler, as he grew up to be, can actually be. And
Mm-hmm.
so right now I have been staying at home with Milo for almost 2 years, which it seems crazy to me because I'm like, wow, the time has gone by so slow in my opinion, because every day is just like a canyon of time that I have to fill, and he's so inquisitive and so curious, and I'm like, I don't know what toddlers do. So I'm spending a lot of time like researching and trying to find things that will keep him entertained. And then I'm also um, facing challenges right now where he is almost 2.5 and he's certainly experiencing all of these big emotions that people tend to talk about when it comes to
They're Charlotte and Milo are very similar in age, right? Is he
yeah,
April and Charlotte's May? Yeah, so they're very close. I 100% hear you.
and it's rough. Like these emotions that he's experiencing and expressing are really triggering a lot of emotions that I have never addressed in my life before. And so it's like it's something I talk about on my blog, but I'm having to reparent my inner 2-year-old, which like in addition to parenting an actual 2-year-old is
Yeah,
interesting.
it is, and it's like I almost the other day wanted to just throw a temper tantrum. Like I just like really wanted to like fall on the ground and like hang my legs and hands and just be like, oh, that might feel better. And I'm like, and sometimes that gives me the perspective of like, I get why she does it. It's like
Yeah,
if I could just do that right now, I could probably think a lot clearer and not be like this, pot that's about to explode, but you got to hold it together. Um,
or do you? Like, see, that's the
right, right.
I'm experimenting with right now. I think I grew up very much like, keep your emotions in check. Like there's something that you keep to yourself, and honestly, you shouldn't even really be feeling negative emotions at all. You should be
Mm-hmm.
happy and content at all times. And so when I feel things that contradict that like conditioning that I grew up with, it's very challenging. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm feeling so much more than I ever allowed myself to feel before.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so like, do I continue to keep that bottled up, like that pot, like that metaphor of just rising pressure with the lid, you know? Or
That's how I feel. Like, that's how I felt this morning. I'm just going to be honest. Like, this morning, I was a boiling pot.
yeah, it happens, and for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's frequently. But I'm learning to like slide that lid to the side a little bit and allow some of that to actually express itself as energy. Because, like you mentioned, like if you were to actually allow yourself to throw a tantrum, and sometimes I do, sometimes I just go outside and like stamp my feet in the ground, like barefoot, and just like ground myself literally, but just like push that energy out. And then
Mm-hmm.
come back to the situation so much more level headed because I've allowed my response to actually manifest instead of like trying to keep it closed up with the fear.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I was talking, I forget who I was saying this to. I was like, I feel like sometimes I'm even watching like maybe this like Let It Go. Okay, here's a good example because we watched it yesterday because Charlotte's been sick, so we've been like watching more TV than I've ever like let her watch before.
Yeah.
And like when I see Elsa like doing the like let it go and like letting everything come out, I literally cry every time. And I'm like, I think it's like I just watch this and I'm like, oh, what would that feel like to just finally let everything out? And
Right.
like in a way I know I'm probably not there because I'm still like sitting here crying about it, but it's like every time I like think about it a little more and it's like the little child in me is kind of like I just want to be let out or I just want all these like feelings to be okay. And
Right.
it's very hard. It's like you're saying, it's reparenting myself. And like thankfully Charlotte is very like emotionally intelligent. She can communicate to me what she's feeling. She can communicate to me what other people are feeling. Like she's super empathetic. And I'm like, okay, at least I'm not like blocking her off. That's kind of like my barometer. I'm like, she can do it, I can do it. Like they teach us so much. It's kind of cool.
So much. Yeah. And I wasn't expecting that too, like in transitioning into like working motherhood and then stay at home motherhood. I have received so many lessons, and it's not because my child is like setting out to actually like teach me. It's not like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so in today's lesson,
Right.
because I am with him and because I am his mother, like inherently, I am learning so much because I've never been a mother before. I've never been a mother to Milo before.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's been a very transformative experience. And I think for me, like I'm someone who doesn't take well to change, and
Mm-hmm.
everything about my life has changed dramatically since I've had a child. And so I think there's still a grieving process that I'm tending to right now as well. And I have to remind myself to have grace because I can want to, it's easy for me to feel like he's 2.5. Why am I still feeling this way?
Mm-hmm. Right.
This, at this point. But it's like grief is not linear. None of this motherhood experience is linear at all. And so it's just allowing these feelings to express themselves and then to um move on, and not dwell on the fact that like, oh, here it is again. It's just like, yeah, here it is. Okay, and now what's next?
Right. Yeah, it is. It's a good reminder. I think that like we do kind of flow in cycles and like the things going to come up again. I think I was talking to somebody on Instagram about this the other day that it's like you can't like anxiety for me. Like I guess I've always struggled with anxiety, but I didn't call it anything until I had Charlotte. Does that make sense? And I'm like, I can't say that I've like conquered anxiety because it's going to come up again. Like there are going to be issues that come along where I'm going to have to face those feelings again. But now I have a lot more tools and I can pull from past wisdom, and
Yeah.
it's it's not going to be the same experience that I had before, but I think it is naive to say like, oh, I'm not going to have to go through that again.
Right. Yeah, because everything is so cyclical. And
Totally. Totally.
like there's so many different seasons that you move in and out of and then back again. So
Especially with kids. Like I mean, she brings up stuff from like last summer where I'm like, how I had no like I would have never remembered that unless you just like told me that right now, you know.
Yeah.
They're like little sponges and they go through and process things like in that circle pattern too. So let's jump back and talk about that like asking for help and and even just like honesty in motherhood. So you mentioned that like you weren't asking for help, especially through those 9 months, or you know maybe that they sat you down and said like, hey, you need to ask for help. So how did that really go in your head? Were you consciously not asking for help? Was it like well, I guess you talk about it and then I'll interject some of my questions if they come up.
I don't think that it was conscious. And if it was it's like a split moment of, okay, well, I have a lot to do right now. Well, no, if I ask, then I have to explain, and then it's just going to take too much time. So let me just do it myself, you know? So it wasn't,
Okay.
I was trying to keep other people out. It just felt like there was so much to be done in such a small amount of time that stopping to even like contemplate asking for help was going to be
It's
too
gonna
much.
slow you down.
Slow me down, and I felt like I didn't have any time to lose. But even that mindset in and of itself was like not healthy, but I didn't realize it then. Um, and so it wasn't, honestly, I don't know. Like my mom and my sister-in-law sat me down and I heard them, but I didn't really hear them, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and by the time that they sat me down, I was already considering leaving my job because at that point it was starting to, like, all the pressures that I was putting on myself were starting to build. And I was like, I don't know how I can maintain this anymore. Like working 40 plus hours and still being like, not that my husband wasn't there, but Milo was so young and my husband has never really been around infants before. So he just felt like completely out of his element. And so
Yeah.
the parenting was left to me, you know, and I was pumping multiple times a day and having to come back in the middle of the day to drop off more milk because he was just drinking it so fast. And
Oh goodness. Yeah, that's a lot.
house, and like, I was the main person cooking and cleaning and taking care of the dogs and like taking Milo to all his appointments and then trying to like stay on deadline. Oh, and then I'd also taken on a part-time job working with my sister-in-law. I was doing way too much.
Yeah. Yeah, and but do you ever find I find this for myself and I think are you a 3 on the Enneagram? Yeah,
Three.
I mean I hear 3 coming through so much. Um I just find that sometimes it's when I'm starting to feel something that's possibly negative or like makes me uncomfortable, what I do is I fill my plate because then I don't have to spend time like in that discomfort.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the busiest times of my life I can like look back and be like, oh, I was avoiding that thing. Does that
Ah,
make any sense?
yes. Yeah.
And so sometimes it was just like it's like instead of like having to ask for help or whatever it is, it's like I'm just going to keep piling more on my plate and
Right.
I'll be responsible and I'll just do everything.
Yeah. Pretty much. I'm not sure if I was avoiding anything consciously. I think like looking back on it, there was a lot about like the birth and then just
Mm,
like early motherhood that I had not processed because everything happened so quickly. Like I had
yeah,
6 weeks of maternity leave, which felt like a long time when I was in it. But then I immediately went back to working full time. Like there was no like slowly ramping up into it. And
right.
so, you know, I was mainly at home by myself for those 6 weeks. People would come and visit, but then they would leave. And I was just there with the baby. So I wasn't really having these honest conversations with other people. And I wasn't receiving a lot of input from people who were further along in their motherhood journey about like what it was like for them. Like these conversations that we're having right now, I think will be so helpful to moms in so many different ages and stages, you know, because
Right.
it's so, it's, what's the word? Just to know that someone else has experienced something similar, to have that solidarity is the word I'm looking for. Um,
I think that's one of the biggest things I just would have loved for somebody to say like this is hard, I've gone through it, I felt exactly how you feel right now, you know.
yeah,
That would have like made me feel like okay, I can do this.
right, Right. Yeah. So I just think that everything happened so quickly that I hadn't truly processed the gravity of the change that was taking place until I left my job, and then everything started to like come flooding in.
Well, and but I think it's probably like the transition piece. It's probably a little bit of like when you're at home with a kid. I mean, I feel like I'm busy and it's like there's like stuff to do all day, but at the same time, there's a lot of moments where you can get in your head. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Oh yes.
Yeah, and then you start to feel, at least for me, like I start to feel like or I start to put expectations on maybe what the day is supposed to look like or what we're supposed to be doing, and it's just really easy to treat. I started treating it like such a job where it was like this should be my checklist for the day.
Hmm.
um and that almost made it a lot harder. Like I was just like, I have to stop thinking about everything as like to-do lists and checklists, and like I have to stop treating my life like a job and just live it.
Yes. Okay. I'm so glad you brought that up because that is the mindset that I moved into immediately after leaving my job, because I felt like I needed some more structure, you know.
Hmm.
And I'm a very to-do list oriented person. I'm very achievement oriented as a type 3. And so I would have these lists and I would have these like chore charts and I would have these activities that I thought that we could go to, but it's amazing how 8 hours can go by and you're in the house and you still haven't gotten to that one load of laundry that you said you were going to do.
Right.
I would end up like every day feeling so bad about myself and all of the things that I had left undone, when really like I wish someone would have told me this, but I can, you know, I'll say it to the people who are watching this right now. Being a mother, just the state of being, is so valuable. Like there is nothing
Oh, that's like so pretty. I like love that. I like want to put that behind right here. I can look at that when I'm working.
I felt like there were all these things I needed to do in order to prove my value. Like, you know, I left my job, so I felt like, well, I need to be really making strides in all these areas to show that like I actually am a valuable contributor to my household. You know, since I'm not
Hmm.
the income I once was, like then this is the way that I'm going to contribute to my household. And I don't know, it very quickly led to me feeling just terrible about myself because I wasn't getting things done in the timeline that I had specified, you know.
Same.
I know it's just being completely unrealistic because at that point Milo was not even napping regularly and he would only nap for like 15 minutes and only in my arms.
Mm.
Like I can't, I'm piling on way too much, you know. And that's not what this experience is about. Like I left my job because I felt that in 5 years, and I shared this with my former boss at the time. I said, I feel like if I look back in 5 years at this crossroads that I'm at right now, and I didn't leave my job, I would regret all of the times that I did not spend with my son, because he's only going to be this young once, you know, and he's like about to start like walking and talking and all of these things, and I just want to be there for that. And so I felt very much like I had to come back to my original why of why I even left my job,
Hmm.
focusing on like treating my life as a job, like you said, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's about being there, really.
Yeah, just my very presence was, and I could see like how much more settled Milo felt and how much like happier like we both were in many moments, and just like being there he felt very much reassured, and I didn't feel so scatterbrained because when I was at work I was always thinking about him, but now I can
Hmm.
see him right in front of me. uh,
Yeah.
so there was a good chunk of time where it's like, okay, this feels right, but then at this point, like 2 years into it, I'm like, okay, this doesn't feel like it's in alignment with who I'm becoming right now.
Yeah, you have to pivot. Like there's always you always have to be flexible, because I was going to ask, like now it seems like you've transitioned to kind of do a little bit more of your own thing, which I think I've struggled with that a lot, like just personally being like, say what you were saying, I'm like, she's only here and with me like this young once, but at the same time, like I also have this like burning desire and passion in my heart, and there's things that I want to share. And not that I don't want her to think like she could be a stay-at-home mom if she wants, but like I also want her to see that if you have something that you love and you want to put out there, like it's okay to do that too.
Yes.
So how has that been for you now, kind of transitioning into having the young honest mother, and what that looks like?
Yeah. So I went back and forth on that for a long time. And I think before we started recording, we started talking about how easy it could be, like within the motherhood space, to like if you want to share something about your experience, and you're coming from a place of wanting to help people, but very often the readers or followers and things like that can feel personally attacked just because they're doing something different than the way that you've presented yourself to be doing it. And so I was very much like following a lot of different moms on Instagram, all of the different viewpoints and different styles and philosophies and things like that. And I was realizing how much they were all influencing me. Like without me realizing it, I started to feel like, I had to live my life in the way that they were. And it was causing a lot of friction because inside I felt that it didn't feel right for me, for where I'm at, for Milo, for where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time I'm like, well, so and so said that, like, this is the way.
Right. It's really
um,
easy to do that when you're a studious person. I think like those of us that like school, we're like, okay, this was the answer. This is what they said to do.
exactly. And so one thing that I've had to grow into is realizing that there really is no one right way to do things, and that we all have to come up with an approach that feels right for who we are as individuals, feels right for our family unit and for our child or children. And so I started realizing myself that in having so much contact with Milo, and then also having so much like burning desire, as you said, to work on these other projects, I was perpetually frustrated. I was
Mm-hmm.
frustrated, like being near Milo, because I felt like, okay, if I'm watching him right now, then I can't be working on these other projects because I need to have like my full attention to be
Mm-hmm.
working on his mother. But I also, if I'm working on his mother while he's here, then I don't have my full attention on him, and that could be very disastrous because he's got things. And so I kept trying to figure out how I could balance all that I wanted to do during his nap time. And it just was not, I wasn't making the progress that I wanted to. And I was feeling so angry. I was taking it out like on myself and also like on the people around me, like the people
Mm-hmm.
most. So finally, I had a conversation with my husband, and I was like, here's how I'm feeling. I just feel like I'm really excited about these projects that I want to work on and that I feel will positively impact the motherhood community and like our family in various ways. But at the same time, I also feel like I'm held back by being the primary caregiver every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And also having to juggle like time with my husband and time with friends. I couldn't figure out how to make that equation work for me. And when I started to release a lot of the pressures I was putting on myself, or like that I was allowing other Instagram moms to place upon me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I could start to get more quiet and still about what it was that I wanted. And I think that when I acknowledge the impermanence of it all, like that it doesn't have to be, okay, I'm making this decision and we have to stick with it for the rest of time.
Right.
Like, let's see how this works for us right now. We'll reevaluate in a couple months, see how it's going. If it's not going well, then we can pivot, like you mentioned, and we can try something else. Like it doesn't have to feel so intense, because
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's not something that we can't change. And so Milo has now been in a Montessori program. He goes twice a week, and he's gone for like 3 months, I think, at this point. And it's been great because now I have like dedicated days, those 2 days a week, to do things like this, like to chat
Yeah.
with you, to conduct my podcast interviews, to write like things for the website, to do beauty counter, everything. And I can be present in my work when he's at his Montessori school, so that when he's home, I can be present with him. And
And
that's,
it's only a couple hours a week, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Like it's amazing. I think that's one of the things. Charlotte starts, well, she was supposed to start her program this week, but the stomach bug.
Oh, oh my
So
God.
she's starting her program next week, but I'm like, it's just going, I think it's just going to feel like a breath of fresh air to just not like, for me it's just like there, I feel like this overwhelming pressure when it's like I'm the person that like watches her every single day, and it's a lot, to be with one person all day long when you feel the magnitude. Like I feel like this responsibility and this magnitude to like do well by her. And not
Yes.
every person, I don't like, not every mom I don't think feels that, but like I do, and I can tell you do too. Right. So it's like, it really is by the end of, like when she goes to bed, I feel like I just like hit the couch and I'm like, oh, like made it through another day. Like, and part of me was feeling bad that I felt like that about motherhood, because I'm like, I don't want to feel like this is exhausting, right? Like I want to feel like this like fills my cup and this lifts me up. And I think in order to do that, I have to have a little bit more time to myself. I need to do things that bring me a little bit more joy. And if it also happens to contribute to the family, like if it was going outside and painting for that time, like it doesn't have to be like a job per se. I think I want people who are listening to this to know that too. Like if it's just going outside in nature and walking while your kid is maybe just hanging out with other kids for a couple hours, like that is totally valid and okay. Um,
I'm gonna go grab a cup of chai tea because I'm not really a coffee person. With a new friend, so like like you said, it doesn't have to be income oriented at all. It could be volunteering in your community. It could be
mhm.
going for a movie. Like I haven't done this yet, but I plan to soon because I haven't seen Downton Abbey the movie yet.
Oh, I wish we lived closer. I would go with you again. I've been trying to find like somebody else to go with me. I'm gonna go by myself if nobody wants to
Yeah,
come. But
go by myself. I told Carl, my husband, last week, I was like, I think I'm going to go and watch it when Milo's at school. And he was like, you're going to go by yourself? I'm like, yes. I just want to like revel in the fact that I can do something by myself like that.
yes,
He actually was like, well, I kind of want to see the movie. So I think we'll go to watch
I
it.
think did he watch the TV show?
He saw some of the episodes.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, then he'll be fine. I mean, I'm like recruiting like people who haven't even like they don't even know who the characters are. I'm like, it's fine. You'll love it.
Yeah.
I say do it.
It can just be something that makes you feel good. Like
Mhm.
sometimes I'll go like to a chiropractor appointment or get my nails done, like something that's not even related to bringing in money or like working, honestly.
Mhm.
Just something to kind of exhale.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Because for a long time, we did hire a nanny for a little bit, and I felt like those hours that we had her, I had to like maximize, and it was not restful. It was not really enjoyable because I felt like I was worried about her at home, and I was worried about I had to get through this whole list, and that's one of the things that I've been able to realize lately. And I'm like, I just hope, because I know other moms are probably feeling that way if I'm feeling that way. That's the other thing that's been nice about opening up and sharing is it's like you always get somebody who says, "Oh, I thought I was the only one."
Yeah.
So I'm sure you experienced that through everything. Well, okay, so one of the questions before I want you to like tell everybody where to connect with you is how do you treat yourself with grace and motherhood now? Because this is Motherhood Grace. I think you kind of mentioned it, but I didn't know if there was anything else that you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I do want to add a couple things. So I think right now I'm learning to treat myself with grace by just allowing myself to be who I am. I do think that it's really important to have these conversations and to have like resources for other moms or soon to be moms to interact with to see like what other experiences can look like. But I do think that it's important to keep in mind that you are your own person, with your
Mm-hmm.
own preferences and your own way of doing things, and that's okay. So I think for a long time I was beating myself up because I had this like amazing mom, who did everything like she's so great at everything that I'm not.
Yeah.
It comes to or it comes with like managing a household and cooking. She's just like effortless. And I was feeling so bad about myself because I'm not good at those things. Like I'm more like digital marketing and like
Mm-hmm.
graphic design and podcasting, and she's like not technologically gifted at all. I don't
Yeah.
think she's me saying that, like she readily admits. And so I felt like, okay, I need to be like her. I need to be doing like how she was doing things. And that was causing me a lot of stress, if you can imagine.
I think that's a really good point because in motherhood, I think it's so easy to be like, look at the mom that's like the Pinterest mom. You know, she's super crafty. Her house is always super cute and put together and decorated for the seasons. And it's like, oh my gosh, why can't I be like her, you know? Or you look at the mom that like has like the full 5-course meal every single night and just loves cooking. And but we all have our strengths. There's something that mom is looking at you and saying, I wish I could be like her, you know? And maybe you're the working mom that just crushes it at her job and still can come home and have babies that like love her, and you know, like it doesn't. I just think it's like important to realize that we all have our own strengths, and that they're going to be different, and it's so easy to want to look in the other lane and say, I wish I was like that, you know. It's and sometimes you don't even, for me it's like I don't even necessarily phrase it that way, and so then I don't realize it's happening until I'm like really down on myself, and I'm like, well, wait a second, why am I even thinking that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very subtle, especially if you spend a lot of time on social media. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the other point I wanted to make too, is like, you know, I think if people are feeling like that with motherhood, especially lately, I've tried to be like, I have to get out of this meme mode. I have to get out of these like modes where it's like motherhood is like crushing us. And I'm like, this is not how I want to think about motherhood. This is, you know, it makes you giggle and you're like, oh yeah, I've had those moments, but it's not the messaging that I want to see when I like log into my phone.
right.
And so I think it's important to like remove those things from your vision, because out of sight, out of mind. Like maybe you'll miss that account 1 or 2 days in, but I promise a week from now, you're not going to be thinking about it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to acknowledge that, like, if you're feeling anything negative, like, start first with that, like, social media and just see what you're consuming. I guess that's kind of a good way to think about it. But make sure you're following Maris, because she does. I think you're very honest about everything. I think you share wins. I think you share your struggles. It's like, it's nice to see, because that's real life, right? Like we have good days and we have like, today's my crappy day and I'm going to share a crappy day because that happens to all of us, right?
Right. Totally. Yeah. So make sure you check me out. I'm over on Instagram at Young Honest Mother, and then my website is younghonestmother.com, and my podcast is Young Honest Mother, the podcast. So
Yay.
remember.
No, that's the way to do it. That's the marketing, right? Well, thank you so much for coming on. I thought this was a really fun conversation. I think there's a lot of value that people can get out of it, and I'm really ready to make a postcard about being a mother. Is enough value, or I got to go back and listen exactly what you said there. Loved it.
Thank you
Um,
for inviting me, Kate.
yeah, so everyone go check out Marissa at Young Honest Mother and tune in for another blog post and interview later. Thank you, Marissa.
You're welcome.